pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire. Missile away.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark B. Lee. I'm the ambassador for Celestis Memorial Spaceflights. I want to make everyone aware at this time, we are broadcasting on YouTube, our Facebook channels. Hopefully we're still running there, and on Twitter. So there's a number of places that you can find us. If there's any problems whatsoever, please notify us or our staff, who will be monitoring this broadcast, and they'll be able to assist you. Not only that, this broadcast is recorded, so you are able to watch this at a later time to get all of the pertinent information that you have during this broadcast. We have another launch coming up. This is another one of our mission briefings, and this is very, very important for all of our members to watch, listen, and take notes. You are able to ask questions during this broadcast, and our team is here to answer any that you may have, and I'm sure there are a number of them. We'll make sure that we clarify any issues or information that we are bringing to you during this broadcast. So please be very, very vocal in terms of anything that you may not understand. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our CEO, Charles Chafer, who will be inviting you to our launch out in New Mexico, and will answer any question you may have. But in the meantime, he's going to go ahead and basically do a rundown for you. Charles, how you doing today, sir?
Doing good. Thank you.
Excellent. More exciting times coming up. I'm really happy another launch is nearby. So we'll go ahead and start off with this. And then can you tell us a little bit of what to expect?
Sure. Well, we're about 3 weeks away. 19th Memorial Spaceflight mission. And the coming mission is named the Aurora Flight, and we will be launching from Spaceport America in New Mexico, in southern New Mexico. Our headquarters city for the launch is Las Cruces, New Mexico. This will be one of our Earthrise services. I believe we have around 120 participants on board, and we've sent invitations to all of our family members to join us for the launch, which is, of course, one of the elements of completing the memorial service that we offer. Not only do we offer the destination for cremated remains or DNA going to space, we also offer the experience, the memorial experience of being part of a real space mission. So for Aurora, the 3-day event kicks off on November 28th with registration at our headquarters hotel, the Spring Hill Suites Marriott in Las Cruces, and then moves into the 29th, where we have 3 events scheduled. It'll be a full day. In the morning will be a trip out to Spaceport America and an up-close briefing of the launch facility and the launch pad tour of the rocket that folks' loved ones will be on board. That is a very interesting and unique opportunity for people to get really right up next to the vehicle, the control center, everything. It's a great tour. And we're very appreciative of Up Aerospace being our hosts for it. We then come back to Las Cruces, and everybody has a few hours until the afternoon and evenings event, which are at the Las Cruces Convention Center. And that will be our memorial service and our pre-flight reception. And highlights of our memorial service will be many, but it's basically an opportunity for family members to remember loved ones aboard. We also will have a guest speaker at the memorial service, Space Shuttle Astronaut Mike Mullane. More on him in a little bit. And then the next morning, dark 30, we bus out to the launch site, and we wait around a little bit. Usually right at sunrise, the liftoff occurs. And it's unlike the rockets that you see flying out of Cape Canaveral. These are very, very powerful and fast rockets that we fly. So that's the event. If you are interested in attending, events.celestis.com is where you go to learn more and to purchase your tickets to attend. There are no private autos allowed at the Spaceport America, so if you want to go, you have to go with us, and we'll welcome many families to that launch. Just a real quick rundown on our other missions that are in the queue. We announced, I guess last month, that the Tranquility lunar mission and Enterprise Voyager mission has now been scheduled by ULA, United Launch Alliance, our provider, on their Vulcan rocket for no earlier than February 15th of next year. So set your calendars appropriately and stay in touch with us, because as we get nearer the launch date gets more certain. We always post launch dates on our website first, and also send out communications to the family members to make sure they're aware of launch dates. So that's Tranquility and Enterprise. Also currently scheduled for that same day, which is, I'm not too concerned about it because that won't happen, is our next Earth orbital mission called Excelsior, which is launching on a Falcon 9 rocket to Earth orbit, and again scheduled for February 15th. So we're in the midst of a run of a lot of missions. I'm sure that many of the folks that see this are interested in their specific mission. And of course, we have a variety of platforms and newsletters and email and you name it that we're happy to keep everybody up to date. We stay in close touch with all of our providers, and we only publish launch dates that have been provided by them so that there's minimal confusion in the process. Okay, I think that we've got a heavy-duty topic and some interesting stuff to go through tonight. So I think I'll leave it at that for the mission updates. But it's exciting. We're in the midst of doing 5 missions in 12 months or 4 missions in 5 months. So it's an exciting time for us at Celestis.
I have to remember to mute myself. I try to politely mute
Sitting here
myself.
waving.
I
Hey,
know. I say, hey, over here. Go Astros. No, anyway, so I mute myself just out of politeness, so you don't hear any background noise or anything from me. The moving of the Enterprise flight. Am I to understand that we are now looking at 3 flights in February or 2?
well, 2 rockets, 3 missions.
Got it. Because one of those missions encompasses one of those
1
flights
rocket
encompasses
houses
2
2
missions.
missions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. so I got it at that time. Once again, guys, if you're joining us, if you haven't found us on Facebook, go on Facebook and find us. We're on Twitter. Go to our Twitter account and find us. Go to YouTube. We're on YouTube where you can find us. You can ask questions at any time. Our staff is on board watching the show as well as us, and we have everything and anything that you need answered. We'll go ahead and accommodate. Charlie, so where are we headed to now? Where would you like to go to during this broadcast now?
Oh, well, thanks. What we said we were going to talk about is how we've served astronauts over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to bring in our director of content and resident space hipster influencer, Emily Carney, to kind of help us through that discussion. I'll do a little background, but Emily is our designated astronaut interactor at our launches, and is also just knows many of the astronauts and can give us some insight, as well as we're going to have an interview that she conducted with our speaker at the Aurora Flight, astronaut Mike Mullane. So I think we'll talk about astronauts, and I'll kick it off for just a little bit of discussion. And that is, when I first thought about astronauts and Celestis, we were born out of an astronaut's imagination. I should start with that by saying that the reason that we're doing what we're doing today is my previous boss in the commercial rocket business, Deke Slayton, who was legendary, national hero, one of the original Mercury astronauts, but also just the guy all of them looked up to. Deke was an amazing man. When he retired, he came and worked for our company, Space Services Inc. of America. And while he, as the president, he conducted our successful Conestoga 1 launch. While he was president, he was approached by 3 people from Merritt Island in Melbourne, Florida, 2 of whom were funeral directors, and one of whom was a Kennedy Space Center engineer. And I guess they were golfing buddies or drinking buddies or what. They all knew each other. They were a clique. And I don't know how they hatched the original idea for Celestis, but they indeed did. And they had it all figured out, and they came to Deke and said, we need to buy a rocket. And Deke was in the rocket selling mode then. And so he heard about the idea and just glommed onto it immediately, just loved it, thought it was perfect. Really simple payload fly, just all kinds of things. So he became really the face of the mid-1980s Celestis. And they called themselves the Celestis Group of Melbourne, Florida. So it was really all Deke's branding, his personal branding on this effort, that it was a very big deal when it was announced in the early 1980s. Johnny Carson mentioned it. We got media all over the world. I can remember going out for lunch, and I'd come back and there were 50 while you were out messages. How do I do this? You know, in any event, great idea, probably gestated a bit before its time, didn't ultimately get to the launch pad, but it was really out of that effort, led by an astronaut, that kicked us into where we are today. If you fast forward to when we were first starting in the mid to late 1990s, then the notion of flying astronauts, would they be interested, really hit me as, why would they want to do that? Because they've already been there, right? That was my thought. If you've already gone while you're alive, do you really need, because at the time, my thinking was perhaps less inclusive than it is now, but at the time it was viewed as, go to space for your memorial service because you could never go there while you were alive. And but I was quickly disabused of that notion by the widow of our first astronaut who we flew, Gordon Cooper. Again, Gordo, another member of the Mercury 7, legendary in his own way. His wife, Susan Cooper, just kind of slapped me silly and said, "What are you talking about? Gordo loved to fly. If I have a chance to give him another flight, I'd be crazy not to do it." And
Yeah.
that kind of got me thinking, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this does have appeal. And subsequently, we've flown Bill Pogue, the Skylab astronaut. We are getting ready to fly the Apollo astronaut, who didn't make it on Apollo, but nevertheless was an Apollo astronaut, Dr. Phil Chapman. And so this whole notion of, we serve astronauts, which is, of course, completely logical. I'm sure any number of Navy officers get scattered at sea as their tribute. So the fact that we have fewer astronauts but the motivation is exactly the same. So we continue to provide that service for anyone that's been fortunate enough to get to space. Another aspect of Celestis and astronauts is that we find that they're the best communicators to our families about what it might be like for their families to experience Earth orbit, space. And so we bring in at all of our missions now someone who's been there, who speaks the language, who's experienced what my friend and one of our previous guests, Frank White, has labeled the overview effect, which is the profound change in who you are and how you think and all that you get by viewing Earth from space. And in fact, I think I've mentioned on some earlier versions of this that Frank noticed that our families are having what he labeled kind of the reverse overview effect when they see their loved ones leaving Earth for space. It's that deeply and profoundly affecting experience. So there's an obvious natural nexus between what we do and the folks that find their way off the planet. And it's cool to be providing services for them. It's also very cool to get to meet many of them. I've worked with some, but I've not met all of them, and just have them share with our families what they experienced the day before. They share it the day before their family, their loved ones about to travel in space. So that's kind of the intro to the topic, and I'm going to hand the microphone virtually over to Emily to talk a little bit about her thoughts and reflections, but also to lead us into the interview that she did with our guest speaker, Mike Mullane.
Yeah, well, once again, thanks for having me on the live stream tonight. And I really wanted to sort of reiterate. You talked about Deke Slayton. He was one of the founding fathers of Space Services Inc. and really one of the founding fathers of the Celestis idea. And I think it's fitting that one of the United States like spaceflight pioneers, he was one of the first astronauts ever. I mean, granted, he didn't fly till 1975, but he had a big management role, which was really important. And he was very well admired by his colleagues and other people he worked with, even outside of NASA. And I just think it's appropriate to talk, and salute him a little bit, because not only his role as an astronaut, but his role in really beginning Memorial space flights. That was really his big vision, and Celestis really fulfilled it. So I did want to mention that, and how I never met Deke Slayton, but I'm very grateful to his example. Um, Another thing I'd like to talk about, and Charles mentioned it a little bit, is we have had several astronauts speak at our events, and the reason, really, there's a few reasons why we've done this. Obviously, it's because they can communicate. As Charles said, they're great communicators. They can communicate to families, what it's actually like to go to space, what it feels like, what the sensation of experiencing microgravity is going to feel like. Because there's not really, if you tally the numbers up, there are a few hundred people who've been to space. That's not many. So it's really incredible when you can, talk to somebody or hear from somebody who's actually been in that situation, where they can say, yeah, I've experienced this. This is exactly what it's like. And this is what your loved one is going to experience up there. And also, another reason why, a lot of the reason is, we bring on astronauts as well, is another thing that Charles brought up, is the overview effect. A lot of astronauts are forever changed by seeing our planet. They start to realize that Earth is not divided. It's really, there's a lot of connected land masses. There aren't any borders. And they come back with really a new perspective on, how to live on the planet. And as Frank White mentioned, he wrote a great article, I think, on Vice, on the website Vice, about how a lot of Celestis families experience a similar kind of overview effect, just by, being able to see their loved one go to space. I mean, that's an experience that not many people have, undergone, and it can be transformative, I think, for people. So, but yeah, we've had several astronauts speak at our events. Some past guest speakers have included Space Shuttle astronauts, including John McBride, Winston Scott, Nicole Stott, and Don Thomas. And also, I wanted to bring up, I hope I did publish this on the blog, so I don't think it's premature in discussing it, but next year during the Tranquility flight, which is due to fly in early 2023, we're going to have Fred Hayes speak at that one. And Fred Hayes is an Apollo legend. Many of us know him. He's a great guy, as well as a legendary astronaut. And everybody who's going to be at that event, who's going to be able to meet him, you're really in for a treat. That's going to be awesome. But before we get to the interview, I wanted to talk about Mike Mullane, who's also awesome to meet, and our families from the Aurora flight are really going to love meeting him. He's a awesome guy. He's been a friend to the group that I run, Space Hipsters, for a long time, and we love him. He's amazing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Mike Mullane, who will be speaking at the Aurora Flight memorial service. Mike Mullane is a 3-time shuttle astronaut. He was brought on as an astronaut candidate in 1978 to the 35 new guys astronaut class, named that because there were 35 of them. And a thing I want to mention too is that class was really the first astronaut class that reflected normal society. It had 6 women in it. It had 3 African American astronauts. It had an Asian American. It was the first class that really looked like America. Previously, it had been mainly, upper middle class white males for Apollo. So It was really the first astronaut class that, NASA really went out of its way to recruit with Nichelle Nichols, who's on our Enterprise flight, to recruit people that really looked like America. So that's something notable. But he was hired in 1978. He is a West Point graduate, and he was in the Air Force, like a lot of astronauts. He flew on 3 missions. He flew on Discovery's first mission, which was STS-41D. He also flew on STS-27 and STS-36. Although he did retire, I think in 1991. He has written an amazing book. If a lot of you may have read it, if you haven't read it yet, you have the opportunity. If you go to the Aurora Flight events, he will have copies of it for sale. But he has a book called Writing Rockets, which discusses all of his experiences, becoming an astronaut, working alongside women astronauts for the first time. There weren't any women astronauts, so it was kind of a learning curve for him. And it's really a fantastic book. It captures that time really beautifully, and I think a lot of you will admire it. But anyway, so without further ado, I would like to we should probably let's run the Mike Mullane video.
So whatever you need is fine.
All right. So let's set the scene. What got you interested in space flight as a youngster? And I know you used to build model rockets. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, going back, I was a child of the space race. Actually, it predates that. My dad was a World War II aviator. I was born 3 weeks after World War II ended, and grew up with his stories of World War II, and the Hollywood was churning out these movies, 1950s movies on the heroics of our airmen in World War II. And here I was, this impressionable 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old boy. So I wanted to be a fighter pilot, even at a very young age. And then Sputnik was launched, and I was 14 years old when that happened. I'm sorry, I was 12 years old when that happened. And then being a fighter pilot didn't seem to do it. I wanted to be an astronaut at that point. I wanted to be a John Glenn or an Alan Shepard, excuse me, and ride rockets into space. So I was all into the space program with the space race. Growing up in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the time, there was a vast desert right outside my door. So I got really interested in homemade rockets. Back in that day, though, when I say homemade rockets, they're not like what you get nowadays at the hobby stores made of cardboard and balsa wood. I'm talking about getting steel tubing and welded fins and mixing up very dangerous chemicals as propellant. In fact, as I joke, I say I was experimenting with homemade rockets. It wasn't rockets, it was pipe bombs with fins is what it was. Very dangerous looking back on it. Of course, when you're a teenager, you never think about that. So that was my early interest in space. I did science fair projects on how rockets might parachute back to Earth from space. Read everything there was to read about the space race, and aimed my career toward getting into the space program in some matter. I mean, I wanted to be an astronaut, but so did every other kid in the country. But I definitely was focused on aviation and space. Wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. When I graduated from high school, I could not get into the Air Force Academy. Ended up going to West Point, which doesn't, West Point accepted me. And as I joke, that doesn't say a lot about West Point. But at any rate, took my commission in the Air Force and had a career there that ultimately gave me the credentials, graduate school, master's degree in aeronautical engineering, some other schools along the way that made me competitive when NASA announced they were selecting astronauts for the shuttle program. Didn't guarantee I'd be an astronaut, it just made me competitive to put an application in.
All right, and that really is a good transition to our next question. The next question that I've got: what kind of roles did you fulfill before you were able to be accepted to that astronaut class?
Well, I went into the Air Force. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Could not be. It turned out my eyesight was too poor. So I ended up flying in the back seat of fighter aircraft, the F-4 Phantom. Some people might be familiar with that. But at any rate, I was a goose. If you saw Top Gun, Maverick and Goose, I was a goose flying in the back seat of these Phantom jets. After some initial training, I went to Vietnam. There, I was flying in the back seat of the reconnaissance version of that aircraft. Our mission was to fly very fast at low altitude over enemy targets, filming enemy targets. And so I did that over there in Vietnam. Then spent 4 years after that in England with the NATO Cold War forces, the Air Force over there. Then from there, I went and got this was a critical moment in my career, looking back on it, as far as being qualified to compete to be an astronaut, is after my England tour, I went back to graduate school and got a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. Then from there, I ended up in another school, the backseater course at test pilot school. That's called Flight Test Engineer School. And then graduated from that and was assigned to doing some weapons testing with aircraft at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And when NASA announced they were selecting astronauts for the shuttle program, I put my application in and was fortunate enough to get selected.
Awesome. Now let's talk a little bit about when you were selected to become an astronaut. Tell us a little bit about your training to become an astronaut, and do you have any sort of amusing stories from that period? Probably a lot of amusing stories.
A lot of amusing stories. I'm not sure I can tell any. Well, the first, when we got selected, let me just talk about the training, because NASA does have a world-class training program. If it's possible to simulate it, they simulate it. So we had a simulator, obviously, for the shuttle. We start, though, very basic. They teach us individual systems. They call it single system trainers, where you learn about the hydraulic system, and then you learn about the electrical system and the environmental control system, and you learn all of these individual systems. And then eventually you graduate into being able to get in with a crew, just a training crew, get in the rest of astronauts who are training, end up in a simulator that from the inside looks just like a space shuttle, all the switches and displays and everything. Doesn't look anything like a shuttle from the outside. It's just a box, but in a hangar in Johnson Space Center. But at any rate, it works. All the responses are as if you were actually in a space shuttle. And they would introduce malfunctions. We would have to learn how to respond to those malfunctions. And then eventually there would be integrated simulations where not only were you being trained inside that simulator, but also you were tied in with mission control, and they were being trained simultaneously. So they were seeing the malfunctions just as if we're in orbit, just like a team reacting to these malfunctions and learning how to overcome problems to make sure we are able to be safe first, but also to press ahead and get the mission done. So it's a very structured and very good training program. They even had a potty trainer. I'm not going to go into how that worked, but it shows the incredible thoroughness of NASA's training program. It really truly was world class. But I'm trying to. Well, you blindside me with some stories I could tell. I'd have to think a little bit to come up with some funny ones. But we were always pulling jokes on each other, doing things that I remember the robot arm. I was training one time with the robot arm, and Judy Resnick was coming in for a training program, and it has a camera on the end of it. And I was down there like she was coming in, and I was had the camera, and she was seeing me. Well, she saw the camera. She knew I was up there operating this thing, and she was laughing about that, knowing that I was up there. I wish I could have talked to her, and I would have said something, but she was laughing about the idea of this big robot arm, going around looking like some type of science fiction creature that was surveying the area. But we had a lot of laughs, no question about it.
Awesome. So, okay, this is the most obvious question. This is kind of a softball question. What was the sensation of actually flying in space like? Did you find it enjoyable? And, would you do it again if, say, Elon called you on the phone and said, "Hey, Mike, come on"?
I would definitely take a ride on Elon's Falcon Dragon combination. No question about it. But first of all, getting into space is scary. I will admit it. I wouldn't have admitted actively when I was there. Astronauts are very introverted about, or you know, a little bit reticent about admitting the fear factor of being out on that launch pad. But it was severe, no question. But at the same time, as I tell people, when you're on that launch pad, you fear for your life. That fear is on you. But at the same time, you are boundlessly joyful. I know that's hard to get your head around, but fear and joy, overwhelming fear, gut fear and overwhelming joy is what you experience out there. Joy that you're going to have this lifetime dream come true. As far as getting into space, or once you're in orbit, obviously the views are make anything you have to endure make it worth it. Looking at the world from a couple hundred miles up is so incredibly beautiful. But there is a downside to it. About half the astronauts get space sickness. Nobody knows what causes that. They never have figured it out. But it is not, and by that I mean it's nausea. Some people vomiting some people can do it for up to a week or more if it's not treated. They do. When I was flying, they didn't treat it. They were afraid to give us drugs, but then later they gave up on trying other ways, and they just put on industrial strength anti-nausea drugs to give people if they happen to get nauseous. But it wasn't correlated to Earth motion sickness. That was a little bit bizarre, and that's what makes it so hard for the doctors to figure out what causes it. I'm a classic example of that. I have been sick in the back of those F4 Phantom jets countless times. I mean, countless. I kept the barf bag factories rolling when I was flying in tactical jets. And yet I fully expected to get sick in orbit, and I never did. Never had the slightest nausea. And then we've had test pilots that have never been motion sick in their life fly up in space, and they'll be affected by this space sickness. So it's just a weird thing. Nobody can figure out what really causes it. But like I said, they now carry up injectable drugs that a person can get to knock down that nausea. Another thing that happens is a fluid shift. We have a lot of blood and fluid in our bodies that's equally distributed up in weightlessness, and that causes your face to swell, get a little bit puffy in the face, but it makes your waist and thighs and calves skinnier, fills out your arms. But the downside of that is also causes the discs of your spine to absorb more fluid and swell, and that pushes your vertebrae apart and makes you taller. I was 1.5 inches taller in space than I am now. Problem with that is it gives you a severe lower backache. Most astronauts complain of a very bad lower backache because the muscles of the lower back don't stretch right away to make room for that longer spine, and so you get a terrific backache. And that takes, my longest mission was a week, and I still had a backache when I landed. It rapidly went away after being on Earth, but I've talked to people who've been up on the space station, and they say it's usually about a month in before their body finally has acclimated fully to weightlessness, as far as no aches, pains, nausea, anything like that. So it makes it uncomfortable, but trust me, just look out the window and you forget about backaches and you forget about everything when you look at that window at Earth. It is so incredibly beautiful.
Awesome. So finally, this is the last question. Finally, there are a lot of people out there who would love to fly in space, all ages, from kids to, older people. Any advice for them? Well,
winning the lottery would make it easy. You could buy your ride into space then, but lacking that, it's so obviously there's just not that many opportunities to become a NASA astronaut and or be an astronaut for Blue Origin or for SpaceX or any of these other startups that might be coming along. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. I mean, if that's a passion, get the education you need to be competitive for it. And the thing about it, there's no downside to that, in the sense that if you get that education and you apply and you're not selected, you still have positioned yourself to be eminently employable with backgrounds in science and engineering, and be fulfilled. If your passion is space, you'll be fulfilled in working on rockets or doing other robot probes going to distant planets. you'll be fulfilled with that. So I would just encourage everybody to hammer away at their education. Make sure early on, you probably ought to look at the medical requirements that are being required. There's no reason to get your hopes up about being an astronaut if you can look right away and see that there's some medical defect that you have that would prevent you from doing that. But again, I would say, hey, even if it prevents you from doing flying in space, it wouldn't prevent you from supporting the space operations as an engineer, as a scientist. I would encourage you to do that.
Excellent. Well, that's all I have, and thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Okay, Emily. Hey, what? I assume you're gonna cut the recording now.
Yeah.
That was fantastic, Emily. That was really good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, he's a lot of fun. I think we're gonna have a great time with him in New Mexico. He's absolutely just a joy to talk to, and just a lot of fun, and has a lot of insight into what it's like, you know. But I mean, he mentioned some of the non-fun parts about going to space, but overall, it's very positive, I think, you know, because he said once you see what the world looks like and how exquisitely beautiful our planet is, you forget about anything else, you know. And I think, you know, and like, you know, Charles brought up earlier, that really speaks to the overview effect. I think once people, you know, get past the trauma of launch and past, you know, other maybe not so pleasant things about astronaut training and things like that, you know, it's not all fun and games. You know, once they see the Earth from that distance, it's just it makes sense, you know. So
yeah. Well, that was incredibly fascinating. I can't wait to be in his presence in New Mexico. I think he's going to be a very, very energetic and entertaining guest. Probably one of our better. All of our astronaut guests have been fantastic, but you know, I'm always looking for more insight into that effect that was mentioned. Charles, what do you got?
A couple of things. Notice that, like every one of them, oh yeah, I'd go back. I'd get on the Falcon 9. I'd go. And also always the view emphasis. So not surprising. And someone who clearly just had a joy in his chosen profession, which is not everyone gets to have that. So if you have that, it's very special.
Yeah.
I was thinking
I'm happy go ahead, Charlie. I'm sorry.
I was about to change the subject, so go ahead, Mark, if you had something.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say I have that effect. I love my job. It's interesting, but I was really focused on the the barfing section of his discussion, and you know, I love roller coasters. I've handled roller coasters, but I do know when that fear kicks in on me at that specific moment on a roller coaster. I mean, how bad can it be, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I know Charles wants to go to another topic, but I will add that what Mike said about some people who are like these trained jet pilots who are used to taking 12 Gs at a time get sick. That's absolutely right. There's no way you can predict space sickness. There are some astronauts who flew like Thunderbirds, you know, the shows, and those are nuts if you've ever seen those. And they got to space. And you'd think they were the last person to get sick, and they were the first person to get sick. There's no way to predict it. It's just your body's in a new environment that it's never been in. That's why.
Yeah. Well, I would be honored to, you know, vomit with the best of them.
Me too.
Okay, Charlie. What do you got, man?
Well, I'd like us to talk a little bit about New Mexico, the space state, for those folks who are coming here, and perhaps for those who are coming here who've never been here before. It's really amazing, the nexus between, you know, we all think about Florida and to some extent California as the big space states, but New Mexico really beginning with with Goddard near Roswell, New Mexico, with his early rocketry experiments, has been at the forefront of space exploration. Listening to Mike, I was reminded of one of the early space shuttle flights landed here in White Sands. They called it Space Harbor then, as an alternative shuttle landing zone. But in between, you've got the White Sands Missile Range, very near Las Cruces, which is essentially, I don't know, it looks like a third of the state. When you look at it, the central part of New Mexico is wide open because it was a U.S. Army missile range. They brought the Von Braun V2s here to see if they could make them work, and flew them into the middle of the desert. And there's a great museum at White Sands, Wismer, as the people that work there call it. We actually, in the mid-'80s, flew some commercial rockets out of White Sands Missile Range because there was no Spaceport America. Spaceport America has been bubbling around as a concept for decades before Sir Richard romanced Governor Richardson into ponying up nearly $250 million New Mexico tax dollars to build the first purpose-built commercial spaceport here. And while it hasn't lived up to the schedule promises of those who built it, it's still an amazing location. And our guests have a unique opportunity to visit this range. It will be getting very busy in the coming years. It's already an active launch range, and it's amazing to see what $250 million dumped on the New Mexican desert right next to the Journey of Death pathway built. You also have the New Mexico Museum of Space History in Alamogordo, where much of this is captured. You have the in Socorro, for anybody that saw the movie Alien, you have those 50-some dishes that all point simultaneously at the same direction and listen. You have Los Alamos lab, where a lot of nuclear space stuff has gone on. It's just an amazing confluence for being such a beautiful, I loved it so much I moved here a few months ago, but a beautiful and empty location meets, this is the place the world goes to space from, and most people don't know it. They have something called the New Mexico Space Trail, which you can, I'm sure you can Google and just, and oftentimes people who come to our launches, two things are true. They're space geeks themselves, hence they've chosen our service for a loved one. And secondly, they come to these events with some more time. In the case of our Florida events, they go do the Florida stuff. In the case of our New Mexico events, besides all the New Mexico space stuff, again, you have just an amazing, it's just a different state from any of the other ones that I've been in. And if you like it, you love it. I was at a Melissa Etheridge concert at the Santa Fe Opera a month or so ago. And as she came on stage, she said, Santa Fe, you all know why you live here.
Yeah.
So,
I have to echo those sentiments, Charlie. When I attended my first launch with you guys out there, it was literally, I hate to use the word in a negative aspect of another planet, but the landscape alone, the terrain, it's nothing I've ever seen before in my entire life. Just white sands. I remember doing one of the launches there. We had a Huey come over from White Sands Missile Range. I think they were loaded up with military officials just to see our launch. That was amazing. I've seen white sand beaches here in Florida, but to see a white sand desert, that is
Oh yeah,
mind blowing. You
yeah.
know? Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well,
It's beautiful.
we love to be able to tell folks, here's some other things you can do. Of course, the main reason everybody comes is to celebrate the life of a loved one and to send that loved one on a journey where there's weightlessness, there's view, there's everything that you could hope for your loved one, and it's just about the coolest memorial service that you can go to.
Agreed.
But it's a
Without
great
question.
location to come to. I started coming here in the mid 1980s when we launched the first ever FAA licensed commercial space flight from
Yeah.
White Sands Museum from White Sands Missile Range in the mid 1980s, and just loved it. And you mentioned the landscape. I got to say the colors. You just
Yeah,
don't
colors.
see
Yes.
colors that you
Yeah.
see out. So
What are the
I know
colors?
you both are looking forward to visiting me out here in my adopted state,
Yeah.
and we are
I've
Well,
never
looking.
been.
I'm gonna concentrate more on Emily's face during that time out there. I really want to see reactions to where you are at that time, which is totally spectacular.
I've
Well,
been to
it's
Tucson, and I've been to I've been to, the Middle East deserts and stuff like that, but I've never been to New Mexico. So this will be
Right.
a big treat for me. I couldn't be more excited to see a
Yeah.
rocket launch out there. I've seen rocket launches at, Kennedy Space Center in
Cape.
Cape Canaveral.
Sure.
They're cool,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
I think this is going to be a little different. So
Yeah. Real quick before we end this broadcast, if anyone has any questions right now, and I want you to get them in now. And if there's anything you have that you'd like to know, you need information on, if you're not sure of what it is you heard during this broadcast, number one, these broadcasts are rebroadcast. Okay, so you'll be able to catch them again on YouTube. Facebook will still have a link somewhere that you can click, and you can go ahead and some people say, or some people rather watch these broadcasts after they've been broadcast. So I get it. Your dinner hour, you have other things to do. You have to shop, whatever. And then you come back and you pick up on it. That doesn't mean you won't get an answer for any questions you may have, even though you can't ask it live at the time. Ask a question, contact us, call us, email us, the whole 9 yards. We know the trip is coming up quickly. So just please make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. You know what to expect. You know what to do. You know what to bring. You know what to carry. Good question for you, Charles, here.
Sure. Rocket from liftoff to landing is under 30 minutes. It's probably about maybe as much as 10 minutes to get to apogee, which is the highest, which is into space, over 72 nautical miles. And then parachutes back. And depending upon how long before we have to depart the launch, we may see the helicopter actually take off to go pick up the capsule. So it's about a half hour of action, and the good part is it's all carried out and announced by the mission control folks at up. So you get to fly. They tell you when it's in space. They tell you when the parachute's deployed. So it's a fun thing. The predominant reason. I was going to say, Maria also asked what else is on board. A wide variety of NASA flight opportunity experiments, a few of which are quite, I don't think they're classified, and that NASA doesn't do anything classified, but closely held secrets about what's flying. on this one, but they're all NASA approved and NASA funded payloads, with the exception of, I believe, there's also an international payload on board, because I know that they've been dealing with the ITAR folks for bringing the payload into the rocket. Got another question about Destiny. Still looking at Q4 2023. Might move. There's not been an official move of that schedule yet. Payload will be weightless for about 6 to 7 minutes.
That's a long time. You know, where's my bag? That's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Maria. Hope to see you out there. I'm assuming you're planning to come. Would be nice if you are. But it'd be nice to see a lot of families. That's one of the great things that I like about these launches, that you end up with great friends after the fact. You're there for singularity, but you walk away with phone numbers and email addresses, because it is a 3-day event. So it's not like you're there for the launch and you go back home. No, we have, some activities, some things planned while you're there. Thank you, Maria, for that answer to that. Can't wait to meet you. And go ahead, Emily, please.
Yeah, one thing I do have to end. I know we have like a couple minutes left, but
Yep, you're good.
there is, if you go to YouTube, and Charles put me on this video. He's the one who told me about this video. There is an awesome video. I think it's by the people at GoPro. They actually put a GoPro on the Up Aerospace Space Loft XL rocket for one of the suborbital flights, and I believe it was also a Celestis flight as well.
Oh,
Yes.
And they recorded the entire thing, and this footage is just like, I've watched this clip probably about 30 times. I mean, it is just mind-blowing. You get to see space, you see the Earth from that high apogee, I mean, it is just, if you go on YouTube, I think if you type in Up Aerospace GoPro, you should be able to find it. And it is just watch it. You got to watch it. I've probably watched it a bunch of times, and it doesn't get old. That's the kind of rocket that we're going to have up in a few days, which is awesome.
That's awesome. Maria, your answer to the dress code has already been answered by our Celestis staff members, but I'll go ahead for everyone who
it'll be chilly. It'll be chilly because we'll be out there before dawn on the New Mexico desert. So bring warm clothes for the desert. Otherwise, people are fairly casual. Some people dress up a little bit for the memorial service, but it's basically a comfortable launch event. And
hey, Charlie, we normally get a rocket up still in the early morning hours, though. So as the sun comes up, we'll get warmer, but we'll probably be over by then. Is that correct?
A little bit. I mean, it warm. The rocket will fly around 8:30, and it'll still be chilly. So also, we're getting questions. Here's a question about how far in advance will we get info for lodging, etc., for Tranquility Enterprise. The minute there's a launch date set, we will be out to you with information. Right now, it's just a flow. The launch date kind of looks like this.
Right.
But the minute, if you're on our list, if you're a family member, you'll get boom immediately. We always post the launch date first on the website, and then we'll follow with a broader announcement and our social media platforms. I think there was one other one there.
Yeah, talking about broadcasting our flights. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll make an announcement about this. We probably won't be doing a immediate live broadcast. There's some issues with the providers about when they want to release it, but we will have the only video of the launch available as near to the launch date time. We'll do it obviously on the same date, but we're still working the details of it. But you will be able to see the launch. The memorial service will be live. So your celebration of your brother-in-law's flight at the Las Cruces Convention Center will be a live stream. And the online is just whatever our launch providers and Spaceport America tell us we can do. So it may be a little bit after it flies that we'll post a video of it flying.
Right. Bear in mind, folks, that we are in the New Mexico desert. There are mountains all around us. So we will definitely work hard in trying to get you immediate coverage as soon as we know we have everything worked out. We've done it before, so just keep your fingers crossed that we'll provide again.
This will be our 19th. It will be our 19th mission, and we always want to recognize the folks that make it possible. And by that, I mean the providers, our staff, but most importantly, those of you who choose our service for your loved one or yourself. Makes it all possible. And we love hosting our families at the launch. It's a life-changing event for people. You can see it on video, you can talk about the effect, but you really kind of have to feel it. And that's transformative for so many people. They can't tell you the number of people that say, I didn't know what to expect, but this is the coolest thing. I'm so glad I chose it for Mom, kind of thing. So we will be on again in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Which is with our 1 week to flight briefing, update, whatever people want to know.
Very important.
Yeah, we'll let you know that we'll be on in 2 weeks. But again, we'll be in 2 weeks, we'll be 9 days
That's
from launch.
What is that, the 21st?
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Please, everyone that's watching this broadcast and anyone who could not watch this broadcast, spread this around. 21st is very, 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 very important. You'd be surprised how many people we hear that said, I didn't know that, I couldn't watch at the time. Do what you can to get all the information passed on to all your loved ones or anyone else that's attending this launch, so you're not caught blindsided. It's going to be incredible. It's a very, very emotional moment for everyone, not just family members, but staff involved. What we do is very heartfelt and emotional for us too. So you'll see that on our faces as well as your loved ones. So once again, next live broadcast is Monday, November 21st. Please do not miss this. Please do not miss this broadcast in 2 weeks, folks. In 2 weeks. I guess we need to thank, we definitely will, without doubt, thank Emily, our Celestis online content provider here, who did a fabulous job with that interview with our keynote speaker in New Mexico, which I'm so excited to meet this guy. I'm really excited to meet this guy. So thank you, Emily, for coming up with that. Charles, as always, we love you, brother. You're fantastic. We worship you. We appreciate you. Everything that you do for the family members and even make your staff happy to be a part of this is well recognized. So thank you on this. 2 weeks is going to come up fast, guys. So don't think it's you got a lot of time. No, put it on your calendar right now. In 2 weeks, we'll be back, and you're going to hear a lot more from us. Any final words from anyone, or is that it? Nope. Okay. Guys, good night. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you in 14 days. All right? See you. Bye. See you guys.
This is the launch conductor in mission control. We pause at this moment in our countdown to remember and honor the lives of each of the participants on the Celestis Memorial Spaceflight. Their presence on this flight signifies a commitment to the opening of the space frontier shared by all of us. We wish the friends and families present today and all those who are with us in spirit all over the world Godspeed, good luck, and our thanks for allowing us to share this very personal time with you today. Elsie out. 5 vehicles armed. 3, 2, 1, fire.